I'm David Blankenhorn. Welcome to the conversation. Happy to have at the table with me tonight Jonathan Rauch. Really good to see you.
Thank you, David. It's good to be here.
You're the author of 6 books and many, many articles about American life and politics. You're a guest scholar at the Brookings Institution. You're a contributor to the National Journal and Atlantic. You are one of the nation's most prominent proponents of gay marriage. Your 2004 book is called Gay Marriage: Why It's Good for Gays, Good for Straights, and Good for America. And last but not least, from my point of view, you are a member of the board of directors of the Institute for American Values, the organization which I direct and which is hosting this program. And so after having fought over the issue of gay marriage and been opponents for some years, you finally changed and adopted my position and joined my board.
Your board changed a little bit along the way itself, but yeah, it
wasn't quite
a journey.
It wasn't quite that way. It has
you,
been,
me, and the country.
It's been quite a journey. We're going to talk about your new book called Denial: My 25 Years Without a Soul. And we're going to talk a little bit about the marriage issue. But you know, I want to say about this new book, Denial. I'm not sure if I ever really told you this story, but it made a big impact on me. I have told you that getting to know you was the main thing for me in changing my mind on the gay marriage issue. And this book, Denial, was an important part of getting to know you, because I remember this. We were driving from Athens, Georgia, to the airport in Atlanta. We had just finished a big debate. I can't remember when this was.
October 2007. I think.
October of 2007. We're driving. It's trafficy. We're worried, you know, but we have an hour and a half or 2 hours in the car after this debate, and it seemed to, I don't know how your memory of it is, but it was for me one of the times where I felt that we were really kind of stopped debating and started talking a little bit. And you told me about growing up in Phoenix. You told me about being a teenager, and at some point you said, you know, I have a book about this that I may publish soon, and would you like to read it? A kind of memoir of your issues around sexuality as a young guy. And I said, yeah. And you sent it to me, and I read it, and it made a big impact on me. A lot of it was new material for me. Made a big impact. And the fact that I knew you made it more of a big thing for me, but in general, for me, made a big impact. So I'm really glad that we can talk about it a little bit.
I'm touched to hear that. I don't know if I knew that before today. Yeah. I remember the car ride, the conversation, the sense of moving outside the usual debate box and into a zone of a more intimate kind of conversation. And at that point, this is, you know, really before I'd made the decision to publish that book, I didn't give it to many people to read. It's very intimate, as you know. It's very naked. I just wanted you to see it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I did. When I read it, it was not called Denial. Why did you finally decide to call it Denial? Why is that the title?
Well, you know the answer to that question. It was originally called Inverse Square: My Journey Toward Love. Very personal title. Yeah. But if there's one thing I've learned in publishing, it's that when a publisher tells you, no, you need a title that people actually know what the book is about.
Yeah, that's right.
You listen to your publisher, and the book is about denial. And it's about the way that self-denial causes something like a personality disorder, and made me feel, you know, much more than just in the closet. made me feel like I was incapable of love, some kind of strange monster, almost creature. And this went on for 25 years. It wasn't that I knew I was gay but didn't want to admit it to the world. It wasn't even that I knew I was gay and wouldn't admit it to myself. It was something less comprehensible. I could not even entertain the idea that I could love someone of the same sex, even though all of the physiological signals and the emotional signals were unambiguous. And I was convinced and am convinced that a lot of that has to do with marriage and family.
Yeah.
Much more than about homosexuality, per se.
What year were you born?
1960.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona.
What parents?
Parents, Jewish New Yorkers, very tolerant.
How'd they end up in Phoenix?
My father got a law job in Phoenix and wanted to live in a new place. And you know, if you're from New York, there's no place newer than Phoenix in the early 50s. But they were liberal. They were not uptight or judgmental on sexual issues. I wasn't either. I was very liberated. I thought from very early, there's nothing wrong with being gay. It's just, of course, I'm not. It was a conservative state, but more, more libertarian than hardcore social right.
So, at some point, you begin to see that something is either amiss or not quite the way you were expecting it, or you're dealing with something. Just say, first of all, how old were you when this happened?
I'll give you a couple of memories that are both very prominent. One is, it's on an old black and white TV, so it had to have been about 1965, 1966. And I'm 5 or 6, and there's a cartoon series on, and it's called Sinbad Jr., and it's about this skinny kid who has a magic belt, and when he yanks on the belt, he grows big muscles and gets very buff and has lots of powers and beats up the bad guys. Now, most kids, boys, are, they love the superheroes and beating up bad guys, but I like the part about the big muscles and the very buff, and I developed a very total obsession with Sinbad in a way that I knew.
He's a cartoon
character.
Yeah, but
you can look it up online.
Yeah,
Sinbad Jr. He looks like a Tom of Finland cartoon, is the way he's drawn.
What was wrong with Superman or something like that?
I got my jollies from Superman, any kind of muscly male figure, but this was the first. And I was only 5 or 6, and I knew that I had some kind of, my total being was focused on this image of this kid with this big muscles and this very good looking, and I knew that was strange. I didn't know what that was, so I didn't tell anyone anything about it. And here's the second memory. Probably a few years later, I might be 9 or 10, I'm not sure.
But the word such as gay or homosexual, that meant nothing.
And sexual, that meant nothing to me. None of that means anything to a 5-year-old. But here's what does mean something to a 10-year-old. And that's family and marriage. We grow up in family, we grow up in marriage. My parents did not have a good marriage, but they were married, and everyone I knew was married, and that's how life was. You grow up and you fall in love, and then you can get married and you have a family, and that's your life.
Right.
And that's what people do when you're 9 or 10. That's just what it is.
Yes.
And I'm sitting on the piano bench one day, and this thought comes into my head from nowhere. It's just given to me as a revelation.
You're playing the piano?
No, I remember this moment because I'm sitting backwards. I'm leaning against the piano bench. But that's how vivid this moment is. And the thought comes to me, I will never get married or have a family. And I know this. This isn't just like, oh, do you suppose? This is like, gosh, I just realized.
You're sitting by yourself?
I'm sitting by myself as I recall. I don't recall other people, and I didn't tell anyone about it. But from that day on, I knew there was something about me. It's long before I ever thought about sex, but I knew there was something about me that was separating me from the life I wanted. And that every single step I took in the direction of what would turn out to be love, but at that stage was just obsession. You know, the attraction, the overwhelming physical attraction you start to feel as a teenager. Every step toward that was a step away from marriage and family.
And that realization, or that moment for you, was it one of sadness or fear, or just plain recognition, or how was
at that moment? What I recall is plain recognition.
Just, this is who I am.
It's like if someone had said to you, you know, David, you're not a spider. You are never going to spin a web and catch flies. You'd say, right. Oh, okay. So that's something I'm not going to do. And I just figured, well,
a realization about yourself.
I guess
this
at that
is
age,
not what
it was just a fact, but it backgrounded all the other facts. And I think there's a lot going on there, but I think that's why in the years, all the years that followed that, every step of the way, every time life threw at me, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay, you're in love with this boy, you have a crush, you're obviously physically aroused, I would concoct some further new mechanism of making that all impossible. You know, it was like, imagine yourself being on a slow boat to China and waving goodbye to the shore and realizing that every single second that shore gets further away and you disappear over the horizon. So I fought
the shore is
the shore,
family life.
The shore is family life. It's what everyone else has. Family, marriage, kids, stability, and I am...
You're going out to sea, or you're
going to some weird place where none of that exists.
And you're waving at that.
And I'm waving goodbye, yeah. So that's when I'm 9 or 10. And then, of course, you know, 13, 14, stuff really starts happening. It starts coming thick and fast.
It's funny, I was reading recently several very important thinkers, and several of them would say in their memoirs, they would say, I don't know if these people were gay or not gay, I'm not even, that's not what's interesting me now, but I remember the sentence about, I knew I would never marry. I knew I would never, and these are men who didn't marry, so.
And long before they knew anything about
13
sex.
years old, I knew I would not do this.
Children understand marriage and family, what, a decade or more before they understand sex or sexuality.
Right.
It's fundamental to our makeup, and that's why I wanted you to read that book. Well, I partly wanted you to read it because I thought you'd like it and I might get some good feedback. But I also wanted you to read it to understand where this marriage thing comes from for me, which is not just an equality place. You know, not just, hey, me too, I'm as good as that other guy. But a deeper place, which is there's part of a lot of human beings that is just not going to be whole and right if separated from the prospect, the hope of this destination in marriage and family. That means a lot to many, many kids.
That was new to me. I know that sounds, that doesn't reflect well on me to say that, but it's true. It was new to me, and I had a more, I think I would have said, if I was being completely honest, I would have said, look, there's an element of this. These guys, you know, they want recognition in the culture. They kind of want they want the gold ring. You know, they want the prize. So what's the prize? Well, the prize is they get to do everything anybody else gets to do.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a I was feeling something along those lines.
We got this a lot in the gay marriage debate. It's like, you know, you guys want society to express its appreciation for you and equality, but can't you think of something other than marriage to do that? You know, go get yourself a brass plaque or something, but don't fiddle with this. This is not a tool for civil rights recognition.
It was,
and I always said, well, you're kind of missing the point there.
Yeah, that, and the idea too that you wanted the right to the thing, but it wasn't necessarily because you wanted the thing. In other words,
yeah,
you know, I want my rights because it's a matter of respect and acceptance. But as far as actually the content, you know, and it was only, well, for me, it was getting to know you, and then eventually others, and then I suspect there's something larger going on in the country about this too, because many people are changing their mind on this issue. It's a very rapid social change. So I'm guessing that many people, not that different than me, you know, you see other people, or you get to know them a little bit, and you see that, well, at least for me, it was important to see that this deeper aspect of, you've told me before about and I know you write about it, this notion of being in the ship that's drifting off this way, and this is family over here. That's what the issue is.
Yeah, and you know, it's been funny in this debate, David, because I would go and talk to gay folks, especially of a generation ahead of me. And in the very first big article I wrote about gay marriage, I said something like, shame on our country if it does not give us this opportunity, but shame on us if we don't use it. And they'd get their backs up about that, because they think I'm shaking their finger and saying, you got to get married or there's something wrong with you. Why aren't you married? You know, like some aged, you know, Jewish mother. Jewish mothers are great. I had one, but you get my point. And I would try to say, no, that's not really what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that the opportunity to marry, that has to be universal. I'm not saying every individual needs to wind up married or can be happily married. It's not for some people, or some people don't manage that. But I'm telling you that life without this opportunity, taken seriously, not just as, you know, some symbol that no one pays any attention to, but taken seriously as part of our culture, there are millions and millions of kids who need that, and who will have better lives growing up knowing that from the very first crush and the first date and the first kiss and the first going steady, that there is a place for that in a caring community.
That family is a possibility for them.
Family will be part of that, and that there's a destination for that love and a commitment to another person for life.
And an institutional form under which it can happen and be structured and recognized as it is for other.
And not just recognized, but all the social help that goes with all the public ways that help keep that union together and help stabilize it. Humans need all these things. You know, we found that out with the AIDS crisis. That was transformative in the marriage debate. People forget that, you know, but gay America has lived through life without family and marriage in this crisis, and it was a catastrophe. And we came out of that saying, forgive the expression, never again.
Yeah. Well, now let's go back to go back to your teenage time, because when you had this experience at the piano chair when you were 10 or 11, but what happens to you when you're in the season of the rising sap and during?
So this is why the other reason the book is called Denial. The book is I wrote it when I was drafted it when I was in my mid-30s.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason was I was then 10 years out from the end of this experience that I call an inversion. And I was forgetting it. It was like, you know how a dream will fade no matter how hard you try to capture it and hang on to it. You can even write it down, but you'll still forget it. That first 25 years was disappearing. And I knew if I didn't get it down on paper, it would be gone. And it is gone now, thank God. I have to read about it myself. But what followed was what I called an inversion, and that was a complete reversal of my personality, so that love became hate and attraction became envy, and childhood became something that could never end. So now let me tell you in less abstract terms what that means. So I'm 14 and I get hit by this total emotional, hormonal truck in the form of a kid named Paul, who's everything I'm not. He's good looking, he's physically
You write about
mature
this
for
guy,
his age.
you write about this person wonderfully in the book.
Thanks.
Such, I felt like I really knew him.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
This guy had, you know, he was blossoming, he was building his muscles. He was a nice guy too, but I went around pretty much all day thinking about him, imagining him without his...
14?
Yeah, 14, 8th
Right.
grade.
Right.
8th grade, 9th grade.
And your classmates.
Yeah,
and
we're
your
classmates
friends.
in elementary school. I befriend him and he puts up with me. And very nice guy, bright too, by the way. He had it all. But I would pretty much while away the hours all the time trying to imagine him without his shirt off, or staring at his biceps, which were big and then got bigger when he started working out, and trying to dream up innovative
Didn't you
ways
start working
to,
out? Didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Hang out at the gym or something like that?
Yeah, well, later
Yeah.
I attached myself to him. I developed schemes for seeing him with, you know,
Yeah.
without his shirt on and getting him to pose for me. I
Yeah.
would say I'd go to the gym with him to help him work out, and I would quote unquote encourage him. And all the time what was going on was just a kid who was just desperately hormonally overwhelmed with the physical attraction to this person. But if I had acknowledged even to myself that I was attracted, then what would that mean? Well, that's the end of family and marriage and any normal future for me, right? So I began constructing little by little this entire framework that I try to outline in the book. And it starts with me thinking, well, this isn't attraction. This very strong feeling, this is like a type of envy, almost a sort of frustration. And what
You wanted to be the muscle
yeah, because
guy.
that should be me, right?
Right.
I mean, why does he get to be like that and not me? So that's why I'm so focused on this person. Well, why would I need to be so envious that I'd be obsessing all the time about another human being? Well, the answer to that must be, first of all, I'll outgrow it. Because pretty soon I'll grow up, I'll get big and strong, and then, you know, the hormones will come on and I'll like girls. So that held it off for a couple of years, but that wasn't working by, you know, 17,
Right.
whatever. So then I developed the next stage of the theory. Well, the reason for my envy is because I am so grotesque. It must be because
envy's a sin. I mean, envy's something that you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, but it's also, you know, why should I care that much about this person's incredibleness? Well, it must be because of my horribleness. It must be because I barely even have the body of a human being. And so I began to develop this profound self-hatred about my body. Now, there are pictures of me when I'm a teenager, and I am indeed a scrawny, pimply teenager. I'm not one of the great specimens, unlike, you know, Paul or some of these other kids in high school. But in real life, I wasn't...
Fairly normal kid.
I was, you know, I was not crazy ugly. But in my mind, I was not even really physically human. I was physically, like, there were three kinds of things on the planet that were human. They're the gods, that's people like Paul.
Right.
You know, those are the young men bursting with masculine confidence and youthful beauty. And then there's the regular boys, and that's like the guys on the street. And that's everybody else except for one other creature. And that other creature is just sort of cursed with a horribleness of being a freak show, a circus freak show, and that's me, barely even human. And I remember, here's another vivid memory, because I knew there was something wrong with this.
Because you, looking back on it now, you feel that you needed to have some way of explaining the situation you were in.
I needed a theory as to why I would be overwhelmed with these uncontrollable, constant feelings toward Paul and toward, you know, every time by that age, every time a good-looking guy comes along, I'm doing
nobody, your parents had not told you, you weren't taught that. Well, I mean, if somebody had said to you, well, what are homosexuals or what are gay people, or if somebody, could you have spoken fluently about the subject, and you would have?
I was in an unusual situation. My parents divorced when I was 12. My mom moved to Berkeley and developed a circle of friends 20 years younger who were mostly gay and befriended me and were great people to this day. And I grew up in a household that knew more than most households about gay things and gay people. And
you weren't being told that gay people
my mother
terrible,
was the opposite. My mother was.
You didn't have pastors or
totally
rabbis telling you that this is a pathway to being separated from God.
And my father was more conventional, but he wasn't. He didn't care about homosexuality one way or the other. These were educated liberals. These were not. There was no shadow of religious-based bigotry in my own case, except the larger social background, which is always there.
Yes, right.
But in my own household, we prided ourselves in not being narrow-minded. So
why did you have to have?
I could have talked to these adults. You know, I could have said, I have these feelings, what's going on? And they would have said, that's perfectly healthy, in my case.
Why did you have to construct a world in which you were a barely human? You're human. Why did that have to?
You know, that book is the best answer I've been able to come up with, and it's more a description than an answer. But there's a lot going on. There is the fact that you don't want to grow up in a life that's stigmatized. Remember, this is the 70s. It's stigmatized and disadvantaged. And in the background of the culture, there is 3,000 years of anti-gay bigotry woven into the fabric, especially back then. Even if you don't believe it in your family, you know it's out there. But I still think the biggest single thing for me was the knowledge that every step I ever took toward acknowledging or acting on the love that I so desperately needed and desired was a step away from the life that
making you other than that.
Yeah. In the 70s, that was every step toward doing something or acknowledging what was going on, then a step toward the world of, in those days, you know, the underground scene.
Right.
The world of nightclubs and bathhouses, and it all seemed, you know, I guessed it was good for some people, but it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted like a family. I wanted a partner.
So you found yourself on a journey that was taking you further and further away from exactly where you could.
I felt like Orpheus descending into the underworld. So I fought with absolutely everything I had. And I was a bright kid, David. You know how it is to be a bright kid. You can make up all sorts of nonsense.
You had a worked out set of ideas about all this.
And the more, you know, it got harder every year to keep it alive. This went on well into college. Went on until I was 25. And that really took some doing.
So you go off to Yale to study as an undergraduate?
I got into Yale. Yale was, by the standard of the day, a gay-friendly place. Turned out my roommate there, sophomore year, was openly gay. By junior year, still a good friend. So Yale is also, it's a pretty safe place, but I remain completely in my little world of denial.
You're not, because I think someone like me who is just trying to understand, you're not a gay person who's trying to hide this from people, right? That's not what it is. You're not just pretending.
I'm not pretending.
You're not pretending.
That's what's so hard to convey, or even for me to understand. I call this, the original title for this book was Inverse Square, A Journey Toward Love.
That's what it was.
And I keep using this word, inverted and inversion. Back in the day, pre-modern world, there was this word for homosexuals in psychology or psychiatry. It was sometimes called an invert.
Invert. I've read that word.
Because, you know, supposedly being gay wasn't just about, you know, what you did sexually. It completely inverted and distorted your whole personality. So you had a personality disorder. Yeah. And that's actually a good description of what happened to me as a result of denying being gay. The best way to put it is like one of these, it's like living in a photographic negative. Everything is proportional. The blacks fade into the whites exactly as they should. It's all the information is there. You can live in the world of a photographic negative and maybe never know really that there's a photographic positive out there. And that's what it was like. But love was hate, and all the energy that most kids at that age should be devoting to falling in love and dating and discovering all that, I was devoting to, first of all, beating myself up for being so grotesque that no woman would ever touch me. Therefore, I couldn't have sex.
Because you were unappealing.
I was terribly ugly and unappealing.
Yeah.
Because I thought one of my other theories is, okay, well, the species wouldn't reproduce if these hormones didn't work. So they'll work. I just need to have sex with a woman, and then that'll turn it on. But I can't have sex with a woman because I'm too ugly, so I don't need to do that. And that worked for a while, and then that...
You were a smart kid.
I was... The layers just go on and on. You'd peel one back and another would pop right up. So I finally, in college...
Well, did you ever go out on a date?
Yeah, I decided, you know, I had to do this.
Right. This had to kick in the
Because I didn't really believe in heterosexuality. Because I really thought, you know, it just didn't seem to me that that could really work. So I figured what all these straight people are doing is they're like forcing themselves to go out on a date. And these straight kids they're kissing the women because they're expected to.
Now, I could have clued you in on that.
I wouldn't have believed you.
That's not how it worked.
So I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. So in high school, I went out with this girl, wonderful girl, and still know her a little bit, and went out in the canal and we had a necking session.
How'd that work out?
You know, it was like, for me, like kissing a stick of wood. It was just such a complete zero. I remember standing there just being very, very bored. Like, when will the bus come?
Right.
And nothing was happening. I tried to imitate what I'd seen in movies.
Yeah.
Wagging my
head.
Right. Nothing happened. We did that a long time, or it seemed like forever, and then broke it off. And she knew nothing was happening.
Right.
And then she broke up with me soon after that. She thought I might be gay. She told me so. I told her, don't worry, I'm not. So then I tried again a couple times.
This is in college.
Well, that first one was high school.
And this girl said to you, well, she said she thought you might be gay.
Yeah, when I was 18.
Trying to talk to you as a friend.
Yeah, she told me that she told her dad, the minister, she thought I might be gay. So that clobbered me.
And you said, oh no.
And I said, no,
not trying to deceive them.
I thought I was some kind of whacked out, sick, straight person who had ultimately what I thought at the very center of all these mechanisms, the beating heart at the very core is I thought I was incapable of loving another human being. And the reason I thought that was that the kind of love that I was capable of, it didn't seem to me like that was love, because how can love separate you from all the institutions of love and all the institutions that turn love into a lifestyle? So these were all theories about why I can't love. It's because I'm ugly, it's because no woman will have me, it's because the love switch hasn't turned on yet, it's because I haven't had good enough sex. So I was in college and decided to try sex with this young woman. She's only 17 and she's German, and she was willing and I was willing in principle, and there was no chemistry. In fact, there was not only no chemistry, but I took off my clothes, and most of them. I got down in my underwear. And she looked me up and down. I was by now 20 or 21. And she said, your legs look like you just got out of Auschwitz.
Ooh.
I'm serious.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was
not such good German etiquette there.
Not so great. Except in a way, it was an ideal excuse to halt the proceedings.
Kind of maybe reinforced your
it reinforced my story.
Your story.
It gave a good excuse to bring the whole episode to a halt, which I did. And so she left and I left, and I filed that away under not working for me.
Right, right.
And then I tried again when I was a little more mature. By this time I was 21, almost graduating, with a wonderful woman who I'm still good friends with, and I couldn't make that work either. And you know, in that case, nothing bad happened. She was wonderful. And we actually achieved a kind of, you know, a really loving intimacy, but what was supposed to happen that night, plumbing didn't work. You know, I was a Kinsey 6, I guess it is. That's where you're on the scale where you're just not attracted to the opposite sex really at all. And so after that, you know, by that time you're 22 and you've been through complete hatred of your body, you've been through the excuse of immaturity, you've been through the excuse of ugliness, because obviously people who are even less attractive are managing. You've tried turning on the switch and the hormones aren't lighting when you have the sex. You try waiting it out, you know, but it's not going away. I'm still, all through this time, I'm still pretty obsessed with Paul. Still think about him all the time, can't wait to get home to Phoenix and see him and, you know, see what new muscles he's grown. So now I'm 22, 23, I'm a grown-up, or supposedly a grown-up, but my childhood is not ending. And I just begin to settle into this kind of numb space, which is kind of the weirdest part of all. It's like the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, the part where they're completely becalmed for day after day after day.
Now you went down to North Carolina.
Yeah, I became a newspaper reporter. That's right. I worked for a newspaper.
A good newspaper. A
good newspaper, the Winston-Salem Journal.
Yep, yep.
I was doing, you know, I was doing great things all through these 25 years and the whole rest of my life. In fact, I was doing better in the rest of my life because I was locking away part of what I should have been doing, which is dating, learning about love.
Yeah, love.
Yeah, and falling on my butt and getting up again and learning how to control and master those urges. I wasn't doing any of that, but I tried to turn it off. I just sort of just said, okay, whatever the love gene is, whatever the mechanism is, I don't have it. I'm the one person on this planet who is not gifted with the ability to love another human being. I do have these crazy obsessions, but you know what? I'm just going to go on with my life. Just going to try to ignore it. I'm going to wall it in a part of the house and just never go there. And that worked some of the time. Of course, the rest of the time, it would all just come screaming out from its part of the house into my part of the house. Panic attacks. I describe one in the book that I still remember. Yeah, you know, like like meltdown panics. And I'd sit there white-knuckled and wait till they subside, and then try to go back to ignoring it.
And I would imagine an extreme feeling of loneliness.
You know, I had friends. I'm an introvert. I didn't think I was lonely. If you'd asked me if I wanted to have sex with a guy, I would have said no. I didn't think I was interested in that. Part of that was naive.
So you thought you were an introvert, you didn't feel lonely? You had friends, busy life?
Yeah, I didn't feel lonely from day to day for want of human company. I felt empty, and that's different. You know, I was busy, I had friends, but there was always this empty part.
Yeah.
That's why I subtitled the book, My 25 Years Without a Soul. I say, you know, the soul is a sovereign, but without love it has no kingdom.
Yeah. So, what changed when you were 25?
Something changed. It got...
You're still down in, you're still a newspaper reporter? Or?
Well, I turn 24, I move to Washington, I get a good job at a magazine, and the situation is kind of becoming unsustainable. And I have a conversation for the first time with a very trusted friend who's gay, who I knew all the time was gay, knew him for a while. And you know, I'm a pretty well-read guy. I'm not a total idiot. I've kind of heard that if you're desperate to see someone with their shirt off and you think about them all the time and you kind of want to touch them, that maybe that could be a
could be an indicator.
Could be an indicator.
Yeah.
So I say to this friend, I say, David, well, you know, I describe these feelings about this kid Paul, now man Paul. I say, do you think that could be a crush? And he kind of stifles it, laughter, because he doesn't want to seem patronizing. Imagine yourself in this situation. And he says, sure sounds like it to me, Jonathan. So I filed that away, but in hindsight, that was my first, it kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know where it came from, but my first willingness to entertain the thought that there was another whole explanation. The decisive time is, I'm turning 25, it's April 1985. Now there's another problem, it's AIDS. Now being gay and being in love and having love doesn't just mean a future without family, without marriage. It means, yeah, it could mean you're dead. Yeah. It could mean you're dead. So that's another thing you're worried about, as if the other things weren't bad enough.
Right.
So that's the context, and I'm going out with another wonderful woman, and you know, we're now grown-ups, right? We're 24 years old, she's a professional woman, and we're going out on dates, and I'm pecking her on the cheek and leaving her at the door every night. We're sitting on the couch, long couch, at the other end of the couch. And that's going on for a while, and it becomes pretty clear she wants to know where she stands. And it dawns on me that I really only have two choices. One is that I can lie to her and tell her, for whatever reason it's not working out, I don't like her, I don't want to see her anymore. And the other is to try something different. So without really totally planning it, I went out with her that night for dinner, and we walked afterwards around and around the block, and I was tongue-tied, and we just kept walking around that block, and she wouldn't let me off the hook. She didn't fill in the gaps in the conversation that night until I could finally say, well, I think I might be homosexual, but I'm going to see someone. Because I thought, you know, it's probably something you go see a therapist about.
Right.
But that was the first time I said it.
Really?
Yeah, to her. And I got that one right. I did not treat everyone right in my life about this. People don't when they're in denial. They use other people. They lie to other people as part of lying to themselves.
You said, I think I might be homosexual, but I'm going to
see someone. Yeah, I think those were my words, something like that. And the rest happened very, very quickly. The rest was the most amazing year of my life, except maybe for this past 12 months, which would be a close second, when the whole country goes through an inversion on gay issues. We'll come back to that if you want. But very rapidly, it was like...
It's almost like a dam bursting or something, right? I mean, just...
Yeah, the analogy is like... Suddenly the light shines through the photographic negative and you see the positive. And everything that was twisted and insane and crazy is suddenly so ordinary it's even banal. Like what I thought was my crazy obsession with guys that had big muscles. I remember I was shortly after this other night I told you about, I went out with a gay friend and I sort of said, well, you know, I have to confess something. I kind of like guys with muscular bodies. And he of course, he couldn't contain himself. He just laughed and he said, who doesn't? And imagine how pathetic I must have seemed. It's like if a heterosexual 25-year-old were to say to you, David, I think I like breasts.
Yeah, funny.
You kind of say, oh, really? Is that right?
What an odd thing to think, yeah.
So that year it was like they used to do these psychology experiments, probably unethical now, but they put people in these goggles that turn the whole world literally upside down.
Wow.
So they can barely function for a little while, for like a day or two, because you can't even walk. But then they wake up one morning, and it's like that. There's no like interim period where the world gradually turns itself right side up. You wake up one morning and you're seeing right side up with the goggles on.
It's funny how
and that's
happens,
what that was
man.
like.
I haven't had, I don't think anything that even approaches that level of profoundness, but I have had important things happen to me in that way. You think there's some slow developmental thing, like you call the slow, it's not. It's like stepping off.
Is that what you found?
It's like stepping off a bus. It's just like...
You woke up over a short period and realized things had changed for you? And then how did that old world look when you were across that bridge?
It's still very familiar. But it was... I don't, you know, you and I are both, if we have the sin of pride, it's probably pride in our minds, you know. We want to be intellectuals, you know.
Yeah, we're so damn smart.
We're so damn smart. So we like to think that we're thinking this thing through step by step. Yeah. You know, like you have we're assembling evidence.
How could you be wrong if you thought it through so well?
But you, man, you had an entire what a story. What a story you told yourself. And by the way, can I just say, it's a ludicrous story.
Oh, of course. And it only gets more ludicrous when you get deeper into it.
Yeah.
You know, I ask myself all sorts of questions now. Why didn't I reach out to a single adult?
Yeah.
And one reason is I knew they would have punctured it, I suppose. Another is I thought I would have been packed off to a shrink or something, and I didn't want that.
Yeah.
But the third is it all made some crazy kind of sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the strangest thing about this book, David, for me, I didn't show it to all that many people after I wrote it. I tried to publish it, but kind of half-heartedly, and it was too short for hardcover, so I pulled it back. Because it's very personal, and, you know, you're not sure as a public intellectual
also,
writer.
in other things you've written that I've read, you're a very good writer, but you have that, you know, there's the kind of reportorial journalistic style.
In theater, they call it the fourth wall. I usually keep the fourth wall up. Well, it's down on
this. This is more like a novel. This is.
I would give this to people, straight people, to read. People like you. We did not have this conversation. But people would say what I'm about to report. And now that the book is published, I continually hear this. I do not understand it, but maybe you will. Straight men read this book and tell me, that resonates with me, something like that happened to me. Not the same thing, but something like that. And I say, how could anything like this possibly have happened to you? And they say, because of, in one case it was drugs or alcohol, or in another case it was ostracism over something else, but that they experienced a period of this kind of denial of something in which they had used their mind to twist their personality and try to put it in a box that wouldn't go. And I kept hearing this again and again from straights, that they related to this syndrome, and I kept not believing it. But I've now heard it so often.
It's a broader category, and
the book's not about homosexuality. It's about denial.
Yeah,
it's about what that does to a human being.
And the links that you go to have a narrative that can help you carry out the denial, and then the internal price that one pays.
It's very damaging.
Yeah,
I'm 53. You know, that's 25 years of my life I lived in that prison.
Tell me something that I found very, I've thought about it a lot. I don't think I've ever had a gay person say this to me, not that I've had this many opportunities, but you said, I think you said that I think these were your words, you said that you experienced your homosexuality as a mild disability. What does that term, what does that sentence, what does that mean to you? in what way?
That's a sentence from another book, which is my book on gay marriage. And interestingly, it was the one sentence that you publicly praised in that book in 2004.
Did I say that out loud? That wasn't such a great thing for me to say.
Yeah, you said it. You said it in the spirit of generosity, but yeah, it was.
It struck me like
that was kind of the point that struck you at the time. What I mean by that is actually something really uncomplicated, which is that I think it would be a pretty wondrous and miraculous thing to conceive and raise a child with someone of my own that is the conception of the two of us. And straights can do that, and gays cannot. And I perceive that as a missed opportunity. And so I call it a mild disability, but you know, by mild disability it means there's lots of things in life I won't have the opportunity
That's specifically
to do.
what you were thinking of.
Yeah. Because that's it. Everything else I can do. But that's a big it, right? You know, that's an important part of life.
We used to fight about this all the time, man, because I would always bring this up over and over again in saying that's why we can't have gay marriage. Because that's how, you know, I don't think I need to repeat to you for the 9 millionth time. Marriage is the protector of the child, and this is how children come into the world, and marriage is linked to their protection. And I never could, always felt like, I didn't know that's what you meant when you said that. That's interesting. So, I still feel that we've never, even when we were fighting about it, and now that we're not fighting about it and have the same view of it as a policy matter, I still don't quite know that we've ever worked this out.
Well, yeah.
Do you want to have children?
I'm not going to. I've passed that bridge.
Yeah.
I'm too old. I think maybe if I'd come out at an earlier time and dealt with it in today's setting, I would have. But Michael and I am married. But you know, to me, what was always odd about your reaction to the fact that gay couples can't conceive and raise a child of their own was it never made a bit of sense to me why you would want to deprive those people of all the other things that you can do to help them stabilize their love and their commitment.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of gay couples are raising kids. They're not biologically related to both parents. And I never did understand. So you got these kids, like me, growing up, it was personal for me, of course. You know, and we don't have that one very important fundamental human opportunity, but we have so many others. Why would the straight world not want to help us be and do those other good things for each other and for our community?
Well, I
never did understand that.
Well, as you know, I've come to share that view of yours, and so we now have the same view on that matter. Some of the remaining opposition to gay marriage is based on this idea that if marriage becomes something in which, with society's blessing, family can be created. Family is created when marriage happens, and new life is brought into these families under the rubric of marriage if society looks with benignness or approval on bringing some children into these families that will not ever know who their mother or their father is biologically, that is a troubling thing. Now that's and we argued about this many times, and not just you and me, but lots of people. And but I didn't realize that when you had spoken before about your own view of your own life, that's what specifically what you had in mind.
Yeah, I should emphasize for all you folks out there in podcast land that the sentence I wrote begins, I experience my homosexuality as a mild disability.
Yes.
I'm not making any objective claims.
Yes, I understand. Now,
and that's only because of my feel of this one thing in life that's out of my reach.
Mm-hmm. Now let's think now about the larger marriage discussion. When we were talking about, when I asked you to come be here today, you said that the theme that you had in mind, or the topic that occurred to you, was called marriage as soulcraft. And we've talked a little bit about the notion of how the book describes your sense of, the book is a memoir of your wrestle with your own sexuality in a way that caused you to deny your soul, deny the deepest thing in you. In what way is marriage soulcraft? Why did you think of that was the title for our talk today? Marriage is soulcraft.
It's of course ripped off from the great book title, great book by George Will, Statecraft and Soulcraft. And you know, I wrote a book making the case for gay marriage, available on Amazon for only $10, which was the Statecraft book. It's about why gay marriage is good public policy, and that's what we argued about all that time. But one reason...
You were nice enough, by the way. You were nice enough to call me up. We didn't know each other. And you called me up and said, oh, David, you're so smart about marriage. Why don't you come be on a panel in Washington to discuss my book? And I got this beautiful, this beautiful publisher's...
Hold that up for the camera.
Yes, this beautiful I didn't even spend the requisite $15. I somehow acquired this
my publisher sent it to you.
Uncorrected proof version where I wrote all my how to trip him up notes in, and I proceeded to go to the event and attack the book and you pretty forcefully, which I've always regretted. I eventually apologized to you for that. I found myself doing that. But yes, that's that book.
That's Statecraft.
Statecraft.
One reason I decided to publish Denial now, despite how personal it is and how naked I am in it, is to try to emotionally debunk this idea that you hear from both sides of the marriage debate, that what we're talking about is a piece of paper from the government. You know, let's just call it civil marriage, for example, and then the problem goes away. Because really all we're dealing with here is some rights and prerogatives and responsibilities that are bestowed on you by the government. And what I want to say
that has come from both sides.
That has come from both sides.
Not everybody on both sides, but it has been on both sides.
And one of the things that you and I have always agreed about from the day we first started debating is that view of marriage is way too thin.
Absolutely.
And what it misses is that these public institutions...
And John, you really were one of the first and one of the few writers about gay marriage that made this a central part of your argument.
Well, one of the few writers, but the entire gay community, most of it got that, because that's what they really wanted. They understood intuitively that what you get is way more than a piece of paper from the government. What you get is a life plan, a lot of social support. You get family if you're married, and most important for me in my life, you get the prospect of family.
Yeah.
you get the prospect of a normal, emotionally healthy, stable life. Mm-hmm. And that's
the boat.
That is
the boat can reach
more important.
Reach a shore.
Yeah, there's an emotional destination.
Yeah.
For our love. And if you gave me a choice and said, okay, so marriage is two things. It's this package of stuff that comes from the state, civil marriage, and it's this package of emotional and social stuff, like the symbolism, all the community stuff, the weddings and the vows and the people who ask you every day, so David, how's your wife? Not because they care, but because that's their way of saying, you're married, act married. If you said you could...
That's a good way to put it, act married.
Yeah. If you had to force me to choose between abolishing all the state stuff and abolishing all the social stuff, it wouldn't even be hard.
Me neither.
The social part is more important because that, yes, I think, is fundamentally what is shaping the ability of all these kids from age 4, age 5, when they feel that very first stirring of what's going to turn into sexuality, knowing there's a future for them.
I can have love in my life.
And I can have family.
I can have family in my life.
And when you get a little older, I can have sex, and those things go together. In an ordinary, healthy human existence, love, sex, and family should go together if they possibly can, and marriage is the institution that makes that happen. And of course, kids too, if there are kids involved. And that makes this possible. It will never be easy to grow up different, you know, to be gay.
Right.
That's just never going to be the same entirely as growing up straight. But when marriage is accepted legally and embraced socially by gay people and by straight people, you are already seeing, as a result of that, a transformation in gay culture in America to something far, far healthier than what we saw in the 70s and 80s. You know, there's sociology, which you know better than anyone, about what cultures look like.
Because, you know,
they're divorced from these institutions. That's what we had. That is disappearing like a bad dream.
I used to think, during our arguing days, that was just that this, you know, that was what...
That was a talking point, right?
It was a talking point. It was. And that's there was something about, you know, gay, the gay lifestyle, or however, you know, and I've really I would imagine that you're surprised. I mean, I am moved by what you know. I went down to. I told you I went down to this little church, little Episcopalian church, downtown New York, about a block from Stonewall. Most of the members of the church are gay, and so I went to talk a little bit about them. Well, what's happening now that people can get married in this church? That gay and lesbian people can get married in the church. And what I wanted to know is, were these gay couples going to change marriage, or was marriage going to change these gay people? You know, I wanted to know what was going to be, you know, how that was. And it turns out that it's a little bit of both, as one might expect. But the overwhelming reality of it is this institution and all of its integrity. There it is, and these people just, you know, now able to participate in it, and it's very moving and very, very moving to see. And you don't. It's not. What's the right word? It's not a plaything, you know. It's not some status, you know. It's something very deep.
It's Soulcraft.
Yeah, soul.
It is Soulcraft.
Yeah.
And you can only imagine how moving it is to me. I'm the last generation that has a foot in both worlds. I grew up in the world of denial, where the idea of marriage and family for gay people was so ludicrous that gay people thought it was ludicrous. First reaction in the gay world to marriage was, why would we want that?
Some of the older people in this congregation still have that kind of
honesty.
Yeah. This is what heterosexuals are
And
doing.
then you look at gay teens, 20s now,
right,
who take gay marriage for granted and just assume they're going to find someone, go on a date. And I'm the last generation that will know when gay marriage on the one hand was an impossibility, and on the other hand when gay marriage was an entitlement. And I have the privilege of sitting on that divide, watching this transformation take place, and knowing that the world that I thought I was going to have to grow up into if I was gay, you know, the bathhouses, the bars, the sex in the public places, the arrests, the criminality, couldn't work for the government, the weirdness of it all, that's vanishing. It really is Soulcraft. And it's, when I said that the second most amazing year of my life is this last 12 months of watching the country, you know, there's a long way to go in political and policy terms before we get a strong national consensus on marriage. But I think we can all see that in the last 12 months something like a tipping point has happened in terms of majority opinion. And I think what that tipping point is that middle America has started seeing same-sex marriage for what it is, which is a basically conservative soulcraft. I think that after years of being hammered at with this message of equality, 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 you're discriminating, it's a right, they're coming around to a somewhat deeper view and a deeper message from us, which is actually, this is making these gay people better. And this is helping them make their communities better. And they're starting to see it as what I always thought it was and would be, which is gay America's coming in from the cold. And that is an incredible thing to witness. And that's an inversion too. To be suddenly going from being the enemy of all that's right and good with the American family to being able to have a part in that story.
Yeah.
That's a transformation. That's like the spectacle upside down thing too.
Yeah. Well, well, I mean, when was the first thing you wrote or spoke out publicly about gay marriage? Was it like around early 90s?
January 1996. Economist magazine, not a byline piece, but and not solo, of course, but cover leader in The Economist calling for gay marriage. And by that time I had already written what would be my public debut, which is May of 1996, a few months later, in New Republic. So it's been, what's that, 17 years.
It's been an amazing time. I mean, I can't imagine what it must look like from your point of view to be the advocate of an idea that was almost completely viewed by everyone around you as completely quixotic, completely unrealistic. Nobody gave it, I mean, it was just, right, a tiny, tiny group of people taking heavy fire from both sides. To now having this become, you might not agree with this, you're more careful in how you like to phrase things, but I think it's something along the lines of conventional wisdom, emerging as conventional wisdom. It's an astonishing social change.
The latest poll numbers, Pew just released a poll. I've been very conservative about this, as you know, about not counting chickens before they hatch. But the latest Pew poll has has spun my head around. 2/3 or more of every group, including evangelicals, now think gay marriage is inevitable. And majorities of every demographic group except white Protestants are for it.
Not all white Protestants.
White Protestants are still, evangelicals are 3-to-1 against.
Yeah.
But they're the only group that's solidly opposed.
Yeah.
Catholics now support gay marriage. And so it's impossible for me to be unhappy in this world.
So
I've seen a few miracles. I've seen the fall of the Berlin Wall. I've seen the fall of apartheid. I've seen this.
And so these kids, these 10, 12, 13-year-old kids that were like you were in Phoenix, they will live in a world soon. It's
Maybe
likely
now.
It's likely
For some of them right now.
for right now that they will live in a world that will not be one in which they will say to themselves, I will not have a family. I cannot love and have a family.
That is, yeah, that kid that I was in 1969, 1970, there will always be some of those kids for whatever reason, but there don't need to be very many. And that kid, if that had been me, 50 years later, that kid probably would have been sitting there thinking, well, my family might be a little different.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start looking.
But this is something that I can have. Yeah.
This is so much more than just civil rights and discrimination.
Yeah.
That's why it's Soulcraft. It
Yeah.
goes to your inner being.
Yeah.
Who you can be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, man. This has really been good. I really appreciate it. It's a good book.
Well, thank you. I hope you won't neglect to mention in the course of this wonderful podcast that it's available on Amazon for only $1.99.
Did you say $10.99?
I said only $1.99
For this book?
for this book. It's an
$1.99.
ebook, and
It's an ebook.
it has been priced so that everyone can read it.
But it's probably hard to get.
Oh, it is so easy to get. All you do is go to Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble or the iBookstore. You enter the search terms Rauch and denial. You pay your $1.99.
There you go.
Did I mention only $1.99?
You're
and
reading.
it downloads to your PC,
You can't get a cup of
Kindle,
coffee in New York for
iPhone,
$1.99.
Android, whatever gadget you got. You can read my book.
It made a big influence on my thinking, and I think it will make a big influence on the thinking of anyone who reads it. And I thank you for coming to talk about it with me today.
Thank you.